Hello, everybody. Welcome to the community conversation. I'm Leila Saad, the CEO of Common Impact, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our guest and speaker today. Zion Escobar is the first executive director of the Houston Freedmen's Town Conservancy, and she's joining us today from Houston, Texas, where she'll tell us a little bit about her life, her work, her organization, and the extraordinary town whose legacy and history she's helping to preserve and promote. Zion will also share her views about the value of the important cross-sector collaborations that we have been exemplifying here today as skills for cities. You'll hear more from Zion about the powerful history and legacy of Freedmen's Town, a town that was built by formerly enslaved people from Louisiana and Texas after emancipation in the 1860s. The town was created by the resilient women and men who came to Houston Freedmen's Town to build homes, streets, schools, and churches, an entire community whose history, culture, and legacy Zion Escobar's organization is dedicated to preserving and promoting. It takes a special kind of organization to uphold and uplift this history, and a special kind of person to really bring that history to life. And Zion Escobar is a very special person, and we're thrilled to have her here today. Zion is a champion of Black history and culture, a spokeswoman for the importance of preserving and promoting lost, untold, and even suppressed histories. And she's a powerful speaker about the value of cross-sector collaborations between the nonprofit and corporate sector, just like the work we've all been doing here today together. I can't wait to give you the opportunity to hear directly from Zion and hear her views as an advocate and a nonprofit leader about the importance of the role that you are all playing today in giving back and paying forward. When corporations share their most valuable asset, their human capital, and their skills and expertise, it's one of the most effective and impactful ways that they can contribute to building greater social good and sharing resources and sharing power, as I've heard Zion say. Just a few more words about Zion Escobar. Today, she dedicates her time to preserving and promoting culture and heritage tourism at Freedmen's Town. But before that, Zion worked as a civil engineer and green infrastructure advocate by providing technical and project support to public agencies, private clients, international NGOs, and design firms from Texas to Silicon Valley to Shanghai. For her contributions, Zion has been named ENR Magazine's Top 20 Under 40 in Texas and Louisiana, as well as the ASCE Young Engineer of the Year. In 2020, she was recognized by Girls Inc. of Greater Houston as the recipient of the Eileen Campbell Vanguard Award for being strong, smart, and bold. After a short presentation, and even during the presentation, Zion would like to open it up to questions and dialogue, so please use your raise hand function to express an interest in asking a question or making a comment, or simply share your thoughts and questions in the chat. With that, it's my privilege to turn it over to the strong, smart, and bold Zion Escobar.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Can everyone hear me? All right, yes. Thumbs up. So happy to be with you all here today. What an incredible opportunity to truly connect, and let me arrange my screens here, to truly connect with individuals like yourself who have a common interest, and you've all found that common impact is your pathway for you to have impact in those various avenues of interest. And our Conservancy here, the Houston Freedmen's Town Conservancy, we were blessed to have an opportunity to work with Common Impact. And so we, like you, are grateful for this synergy, for how we come together and realize the value of this very unique slice of activity that you choose to do, and how it affects everything else you do that you have to do. And so thank you for that. With that, I'm going to hop right into just sharing with you all a little bit about what this story is, what the organization is doing, and to show how you can really fit into this big picture of collective good, of being more than just a giver, but a doer and a mover of your power, of your agency, and a sharer of your power and your agency. So a little bit about us. A little bit about Freedmen's Town first and foremost. So Freedmen's Town is Houston's oldest Black settlement and affectionately called the child of Juneteenth. And so, yes, you heard that right. Juneteenth, the national holiday, this community here in Houston, which part of it stretches to downtown Houston, is the place that after Juneteenth, this is the place that folks who were free came to settle. Most people in America have no idea. We're aiming to correct that gap in our collective understanding and history. And historically, as an act of resistance, Black residents of Freedmenstown mobilized resources and shaped social movements to create a space for Black futures. And as you think about all the things happening in the world, you have various organizations and they have their corporate social responsibility goals and things like that. Well, I would encourage you to, we can get out of the technical speak and get into what this really means to people directly. And what I'll say to you is what's quoted here is, as Black communities nationwide seek new models for development and community, shareholding and equitable investments into neighborhood real estate trusts may be a solution for Black futures. I'm going to talk to you all about one of those things, which is part of many of the things that we're doing, but it's one that I invite you to be part of the ongoing national conversation in this regard, because I think this is the strongest opportunity for intersection for so many people from a variety of disciplines and backgrounds. And so with that, a little bit about the Conservancy specifically, our mission and values, right? So what we are here to do as a nonprofit is we are dedicated to securing the future of Houston's one-of-a-kind heritage district by cultivating its economic potential. And so Houston has theater districts, arts districts, has historic districts, has various other districts with intention. We are the first heritage district, meaning the heritage is centered. And if you know anything about Houston, history and heritage are not core to the ethos of how this city makes its money, right? And why it's known all over the world. And so we are that bleeding edge of this new ushering in of synergies of culture and community and investment and how to build wealth and bring a lot of people into the wealth building process so that you can activate a lot of positive impact. And so with community engagement, re-education, and the development of heritage tourism specifically, we are going to trigger investment to transform Freedmenstown into a center of commerce and tourism and expand its recognition to a legacy of global scale. We are going for a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation, and we can go to the next slide. And so what we're doing is strategically, we are going from a place that has been disenfranchised, has been redlined, was intentionally maligned, and I'll let you do some research. Anytime you want to like grab a pint of ice cream and just watch something on YouTube, I encourage you to do this. Look up on YouTube, Who Killed Fourth Ward? Who Killed Fourth Ward? It's a 3-part documentary series, and it's going to show you a revealing behind the scenes look from the 70s about how this community was intentionally focused on because it was strategically in a place that others wanted for other purposes. All of downtown Houston, parts of downtown Houston are on Freedmenstown, including our city hall. And so again, you'll find the backstory of what the intentions and what the plan was to take this community, which was historically Black owned, Black built from the ground up from emancipation, and has now been kind of merged into other things. You'll see why all of that matters as I go forward in the presentation, but I just wanted to give you that bit of a tidbit about some of the history if you want to kind of investigate what's this story about and how dare you say things like this. It's like, go find the receipts. And you'll see that what I'm saying is not speculation, and everyone collectively here in Houston understands and acknowledges it, so it's not necessarily polarizing anymore, but it used to be. So strategically, what are we doing? And I'll share these with you, not for the sake of educating about what we specifically do, but helping you to see a framework for how you can look at other organizations in your community, in your proximity, maybe serving in your church, serving in your neighborhood, even how you see, the purpose of your local HOA, right? What things can you all be doing from an individual to a collective to your employment and otherwise. You can maybe see parallels here. So strategically, what we are doing is we are addressing things from historic preservation and building a resilient community. This community is over 150 years old, and it has withstood, in many regards, the test of time and several hurricanes that have taken out half the city, but this community is still standing. How is that so? It was built resiliently. We are working on and working through heritage tourism and creating engaging experiences to bring this incredible story of freedom to the entire world, not just the Texans or Houstonians or America. The entire world will know about this space. And in fact, we have 7 UNESCO sites of memory, the most in America, in this one community in Houston. So again, UNESCO World Heritage Site designation is part of our end game here. That's a 20-year time horizon. There's a lot of work to be done to get there. We are doing the foundational heritage tourism and engaging experiences work to get there. There's education and citizen empowerment. People have been excluded from things because of apathy, because of ignorance, because of choice, because of many different reasons why people don't get engaged in their local community and then claim disempowerment. But we want to activate people and give them opportunities to be empowered, to get re-engaged and get re-educated about the value of the community they live in and the prospects of it being valuable to the entire world. But you have to understand the context of which you live first. That, and we are doing collaborative leadership and networking. We have many, many partnerships with city entities and organizations and universities, everyone from Rice University, Texas Southern University, local grassroots nonprofits that have been around for 40+ years. And so finding how to put all of those different stakeholders together to achieve a collective outcome, that is what we are doing. And of course, we have our organizational growth and effectiveness, because you can't take on a mission like this without that as your core. And so part of how you all can see yourselves in the future of being of impact is all of these things touch something that you relate to in your personal life and your professional life, and you can find an intersection. I'll continue to show you other ways that this shows up and matters for communities. Next slide. So how do we execute on these big strategic visions I just kind of mentioned? And by the way, I'm giving you the super high level. There's like 50 initiatives happening right now. So I'm just giving you a slice of pie that I think is just timely, given things that are happening here locally. And so we're just talking about one small section that is an easy entree for a lot of people to find a parallel in their communities and find out how they could help move things forward and be of impact on various levels. So what we're doing, you can see here this map, this outer boundary here, which has a red dashed line, that's our heritage district. You'll see on the far right, well, you see there's a yellow set of lines going down the middle. That's I-45, cuts right through the city of Houston, cuts right through Freedmen's Town. Freedmen's Town existed before that highway came and cut through it. Everyone knows about urban renewal projects and how so many communities were torn apart historically because of big highways that divided them and broke them. This community is the poster child for that story. And if you look at that Who Killed Fourth Ward, you will find out exactly the details behind that. But either way it goes, on the right-hand side of that I-45, that's downtown Houston you're looking at. And in fact, the picture that's on the far right-hand center is a church. That church is Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. It's the oldest Black Baptist church in the city of Houston, and is a UNESCO World Heritage, UNESCO Site of Memory, excuse me. And the glass reflective structure behind it is what used to be Enron, which is now Chevron. So everyone's heard about Enron. How have you not heard about the community that Enron built in and developed over, right? So just to give you context as to where this is. So that's all downtown Houston, but the parts that used to be Freedmen's Town. And the space across the highway from it is the residential area, which is undergoing lots of change and has undergone lots of change. Many historic assets there in that community. First School for Free Black Children, which is the bottom left-hand inset photo. The middle left-hand photo is the historic brick street built by hand, historic brick streets built by hand by the descendants of the formerly enslaved, paid for with their own monies. So anyway, that's just a story about that community, some of the things happening there. But what I want you to see is some of the things we're talking about as far as how we're going to execute on our vision. And so one of the things we're discussing with funders, with foundations, with local government, various agencies, is this concept of a community trust, right? And so what you'll see here is that having a community trust allows us the resources to influence and address public policy, stop gentrification, and leverage our funds to enhance infrastructure while operating under a singular entity. We are creating instruments of investment to impact and benefit communities. And the idea is that this will actually turn a dividend for those within the community, meaning that if you're a stakeholder, you're a property owner, you're a legacy resident, you're a corporation who's connected to, benefiting from, invested in this community, the trust is your vehicle to essentially realize dividends back out from what you put in. These are progressive models that people like the Ford Foundation, the Kresge Foundation are all looking at as tools for how to bring some of these kind of desolate, destitute communities back into the fold in a way that is equitable. That community trust is going to require lots of investment from many, many different partners. There's opportunities there to get in, but do it the right way, to not come top down, to come with the people who have been self-selected as the stakeholders, the trustees, the owners, to come alongside them and help amplify their intentions. That's one path we're working on. Something else you might have heard about, feel free to Google it, conservation districts. Houston, you may have heard, has no zoning. There's no zoning in Houston. And so we have to do different things here to move policies forward to make community development possible. Just wanted to point out to you that that's something that's happening here. You'll see how it's connected in the future slides. And so just one thing to note, bottom last line before going to the next slide. The community trust could be the answer to protecting and preserving Freedmen's Town and Black communities like it. What we are doing is creating a model for replication across the nation. And that's why this conversation is important to everyone. This is less about Freedmen's Town and more about the model that it represents and its opportunity for us all to learn, to experiment, and to grow and impact together. We can go to the next slide. So I'll just go high level here. Don't want to take too much time. And again, if anyone has questions, someone let me know if there's anything in the chat. If anyone wants to chime in with anything. What I'll tell you here is with this community trust, and I see a hand raised.
Yes, we do. We have Lourdes. If you want to jump in with a question.
Yeah, it's a question slide observation that I really appreciate the work that you're doing and how you're laying out some of these foundational teachings for funders, particularly as you're moving this endeavor. But one thing that I can help to mention is how as women, leaders of color, had to always even unlearn things that we learn from philanthropy and systems of influence and power. When you talk about building resilient communities, I can help to wonder, I have to unlearn that because I would prefer not to build a resilient community. I would prefer to have a system that works for everybody, because resiliency implies that we all have to endure systemic barriers, and we know who endures those systems, and that is people that looks like you and me. And so for me, I had to be very intentional in cutting myself saying that and making a big effort not to say it. I don't want our clients and the people we serve to be resilient. I want a system that works for them so they don't have to be resilient. So I just kind of want to offer that nudge just as a reflection of, even us, we are so used to that narrative and the language that we use from philanthropy and other spaces that oftentimes we perpetuate the problem by just the language we use. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I just out of curiosity, do you have any suggested alternatives for verbiage that's not resiliency? One of the things that you'll see here on the slide is we're moving towards a circular economy and a sustainable set of systems. Sustainable and equitable systems is kind of where we're heading. But I would love any suggestions. Feel free to drop them in the chat, because I too agree with you as far as resiliency seems like something to endure. I'll be honest with you, resiliency is a term that we're using a lot here in Houston, given that we have resiliency plans, but it's oftentimes as a response to climate change, which is something we do have to continue to endure. And but when it comes to systems of building, I agree with you. You don't want to always be in a state of victimization and having to overcome some continuous onslaught, right? Unfortunately, with Houston, the onslaught keeps coming in the form of hurricanes and flooding, and so that's the term and the way that the context of which resiliency is being used here in Houston is that we want communities that can endure and not get wiped out with every flood and every infrastructure failure, essentially. But thank you for that. And I'll look in the chat for suggested language going forward. And I received that, and thank you for that contribution.
Thank you.
And so with that, this community trust, the ultimate goal is to preserve community serving businesses, build community wealth, and promote community-led economic development from within, which some of those words are very commonly used: wealth, business, community, economic development. The difference is the from within, right? And that's where we all have an opportunity to learn and to adapt. And so part of what's driving this approach is we want to enable residents to have greater control over their communities while providing an opportunity to grow their wealth, right? We want to leverage the vacant lots to address affordable housing gaps and commercial options. We want to trigger catalytic investments that help build a circular and sustainable economy. And we want to fund resilient infrastructure because their infrastructure will have to endure. We want to create sustainable communities for the people. We want the infrastructure to be resilient. Let me know if that is heading in the right direction as far as language. We want to restore community amenities, increase tax base, address social determinants of health, and reduce crime and violence. Now you're saying that's a lot of stuff. However, research has shown that when you do some of these quality of life elements, especially led for, with, by the people, these are the resulting impacts. And so it's not ambitious to say that these things are the one-to-one results of doing some of these concepts we're talking about here, specifically the trust. Chicago Community Trust, if you Google that, has been doing this successfully and is on a war path to change the trajectory of Chicago to address all of these same social determinants of health. We aim to not completely eliminate the gentrification, but to reduce that, but to eliminate the threat of gentrification that heritage tourism typically brings. When people come to your community, they typically are taking all of their opportunities and wealth with them. We want to make sure that they deposit that. Thank you, Lourdes, for that contribution. I'll read that here at the end. We want to ensure that heritage tourism investments are equitable development partnerships. On to the next slide. Just high level here, the trust aims to help residents benefit from economic prosperity that heritage tourism will catalyze and build connections through financial inclusion. That's the opportunity that I think corporations have here, is that while we go through the planning and pre-development stages of trusts like ours, trusts like that are happening throughout the entire country, seek out those opportunities for who's doing that local, community, neighborhood, block by block based development that's led by the community. Invest in their ability to organize, to explore, to quantify, to do feasibility and workflows, to look at property and real estate. That's where all of your minds on the monies, the dollars, the legal, the economics, the marketing of things could really, really, really help just transform and accelerate the opportunities that some of these groups are looking for. And so we can keep it moving to the next slide. I just want you to see a lens of how you can start to help in a very, very, very impactful, very direct way from the bottom up. And so we have conservation districts being discussed here locally. We have the benefit of having been awarded or designated as a conservation district. We've just passed that through our city council here in the last 2 weeks. And it's a transformative tool that allows us to preserve communities and to master plan and protect places that don't have zoning, that don't have deed restrictions. And so you'll see some quotes here, and I won't go through them all, but we have local funders who are saying that Zion's idea for a more robust and effective mode of preserving Freedmenstown is on point, saying we have to have new and innovative solutions. And so these concepts we're talking about all fold together. I know I'm giving a lot of high level things here, and next slide, but I want you to see that there are things out there, there are words out there that you can follow up on and see how these things are happening in communities near you, or what the equivalent is for your district, for your neighborhood, for your zones, of where you have commercial business districts and things like that. This is a little bit more about how conservation districts will help with the preservation of the community. Really, I want you to see this graphic here, which tells you the whole story with me saying very little. 1984, all those black rooftops were homes that were historic homes from the founding of Freedmenstown back in 1865, 1866, after emancipation. 1984, this is how much was left. From 1984 to 2021, all the red is all the new stuff. This is what gentrification looks like. I just want you to see that when people speak about it, it's not a hypothetical, it's not an emotional response, it's not a sense of something happened to you that you don't like. It literally is the transformation of what was there, knocking it down and putting something new and pushing people out. And so we're trying to find ways to repatriate people and build this character back into Freedmen's Town, and we're calling it the rebirth. And so the last line here on the slide, the rebirth of Freedmen's Town will demonstrate equitable development and historic preservation because the memory of this space is just as valuable as existing and future infrastructure. Now, I want you all to see the value in places where you interface with infrastructure or community development or preservation or just development in general, and to find a way to have an equitable lens. We can go to the next slide. So again, I'm just going to go through this quickly because I want us to have as much time to talk to each other and interact and learn from each other as possible and have a dialogue about some of these thought prompts. That's really what this is. These are thought prompts to start a conversation together. So one of the things that we're doing here in the Heritage District is we have all these various historic preservation initiatives. Creating the Heritage District was one of them. That's the first tool. And then there's little clusters of historic districts, protecting what's special so that it can't be torn down, landmarking it so that it stays there long term, creating conservation districts to guide development and almost kind of have design guidelines in urban areas, which doesn't always happen, especially in Houston, if you know kind of our local ethos of development first and everyone else's preferences second. Again, I mentioned the UNESCO sites of memory, which are incredible and hint towards our intention for a UNESCO World Heritage Site, kind of like the one in San Antonio with the missions. Some people are familiar with the Alamo, but it's really the missions that are the UNESCO World Heritage Site designation sites. And again, they're generating hundreds of millions of dollars in economic value. And when you think about the opportunity for how you as an individual, how you as an organization, a company, a corporation can interface with these opportunities, there's incredible value to be realized by being at the forefront of some of these historic and heritage and preservation and community-led efforts, because that's where the rest of the money is, as far as what's left, and audiences and people to be reached and new and refreshing ways to approach equity. So without conservation districts and heritage districts in place, Freedmen's Town and many other marginalized communities like it will cease to exist. And so you can be part of protecting history and heritage that's special to some people if it's not specifically you, and then you have an opportunity to be the economic engine behind this level of impact that transforms people's lives, their legacies, and their ability to look back at their story and see excellence and see success. And so with that, we can move to the next slide. So just want to help you guys see kind of and visualize this rebirth that we're on. Just want to kind of share with you some of the things we've been doing so that, again, if you see some of these things happening locally, you can say, oh, well, there might be an opportunity to do something unique here. Let's think outside of the box. We've been thinking outside of the box, and so we've been advocating for policy. That's the Heritage District that got passed, bullet number 1. We have a preservation and financial incentive, figuring out how to both preserve and incentivize the financial rebirth of certain spaces. The conservation districts, which now, since this slide has been created, has passed and now is a new legal ordinance in the city of Houston. We've been connecting philanthropy to impact. And so we've been doing that with various national foundations and organizations who are putting in small amounts that are having a transformative effect on this community. Next slide. So we've been building collective power all along the way because we want this to be from the ground up, community-led. What do you want? What do you see? What do you need? What's not here? What's not serving you? That way, the solutions are matched with those responses, and they're real in time and they're effective. They're not imposed when they are a response to a very clear directive coming from people as to what they want and aspire to in their communities. All right. So wrapping up here, so I'm getting the prompt. Just knowing that as we go through this rebirth process, we've done these things. This last one with this red circle here, this is where, again, you have a chance to come in and addressing critical needs that affect social determinants of health, food, crime, wellness, education, job, quality of life. All of these things help catalyze neighborhood investment. They help do all the things that on the bottom, and the bottom line is it helps grow household health and wealth. And that's what you have a chance to do when you reframe how you can help and what those things do and where that help comes in, no matter where it comes in the tree, in the decision tree, how it all comes down to the root of growing household health and wealth. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So here's where we end. This is just some resources that gives you guys info if you're interested in geeking out on some of these things. I don't expect this to be of interest to majority of everyone, but many times people ask for resources like, oh, I heard about that. I want to see what that means. What's Chicago doing? Oh, that's interesting. Let me look into that. These are the links. They go directly there. This presentation is authorized to be shared with anyone who's on this call. And so you'll be able to click those links directly and go to the PDF that are exploring these community ownership models and things like that, and have done the case studies for it nationwide. So with that, last slide, I think that's it for us. Questions, emails, that info email down there, if you reach out there, one of us will get back to you as soon as we can. And I'm going to close it out there so that we can open up for questions and interaction and dialogue. Tell me what you think about these thought prompts and how you see yourself showing up in ways to be impactful and equitable. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, Leila, go ahead.
Sion, thank you so much for the presentation. It's just amazing to learn about all this level of detail that you shared, and thank you for lifting this all up for us. Can you tell us, do you think this is like a particularly important historical moment to bring this movement forward to the national, global level? And if so, why? What is it about today?
So these efforts and what I'm speaking about, folks have intended this since literally the year I was born. I was born in 1985, and there was a National Register of Historic District created in 1985 because everyone saw the writing on the wall. When I-45 came in and they started demolishing homes and displacing people in the hundreds at a time, people said, oh, we have to do something. So those moments start showing people there's something that needs to be done. The social justice movement that's happening as of late, there's kind of a reawakening that happened in the last few years, right? And there's pros and cons to what it means and what it did and what it didn't do. But what it did is it opened our hearts and minds to have a conversation about what are we really doing here? What is the American dream, and what is unjust and what is just, and what side am I on? And I think that's where we are right now, and things that could not be addressed or even spoken about without it feeling like you're baiting someone on something. Now we're being able to, we can discuss it. What is equity? Who benefits? Who are we calling a winner? Who wins? What does winning look like, right? Who should be the losers? Should it always be the same group of people? Is there something wrong with that? Is there something wrong with them? Are they just losers? Or were there decisions made that were going to make sure they were losers? How do we help them be winners? How do we at least get them at the table so that anyone who's worthy of winning can win? So that's the kind of conversations that I think this transformative time we've had in our country is helping to start. I don't know if that's too generic, but I think that's where we are. That's where our funders are, saying, okay, we know things have been wrong. Let's talk. How can I help? It's like, well, community garden, farmers market, assistance with building these kind of systems that help sustain people. You don't have to have all the answers. Put your money into a system that helps people. These trusts, it's a neighborhood level, it's local, they have agencies, like investing into an HOA, but not quite, Anyhow, I do see other questions.
Yes.
I know we have short
Thanks,
time.
Sion. Ben, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely astounding and engaging discussion. Thank you. My question is primarily about how have you found support from governmental entities, in both in your region, from a national level? Are you getting any buy-in from your local elected officials, and have you found that they're working with larger organizations like, say, the National Park Service, which manages the National Register of Historic Places? Are you finding that you're getting much, if any, support there?
So support, yes. Funding, no. And
gotcha.
So, and that's the next part we're working on. So we have the Heritage District is a stewardship agreement, a joint partnership to operate with Public Works, with the City of Houston, this historic area. So we have the partnership. On paper, we're married. We're in a relationship, right? Now, mind you, they're keeping their money in their account, and we're keeping ours in ours, and they're not transferring money to our account every month, but we're about to change that. We're having some conversations here soon about saying, hey, well, can we at least get a percentage of what it is we're bringing into this area? Please, since you took it all, can we at least get a percentage of return? So there's that. And then what we found ourselves as our role as advocate is to actually be the bridge between these things, because there are many systems that are not built to have this level of benevolence, right? And so it takes these nonprofit partners like yourself who are having corporations do something for a good, right? Who are putting things into a different use. And so what we are is a bridge. We work with the National Park Service on these things, and we're trying to gather all the education and the history and the research and the advocacy to be able to bring these things together, and working with academic partners and community partners as well to facilitate this. So it's, yes, the money hasn't shown up yet, and we can blame the pandemic, but we're going into a new phase of calling in the favors soon.
Awesome.
You'll hear about
Thank
it. And actually with that, I want to your point, we have an event this evening, which will be streamed on YouTube, but you have to sign up to get the registration link because it's an unlisted link. And it's actually, we're having a conversation with national folks who are doing this, like the National Trust for Historic Preservation, right? Like other communities and folks who have been successful at doing what we're talking about doing in Houston. They've been doing it in Atlanta. They've been doing it in Pittsburgh. There's a huge deal that was just brokered with the National Hockey League to benefit the Black community that essentially they mowed over to create their entire sports complex and space. And now they're in a community benefits agreement, helping that community to redevelop and bring it back to itself. Everyone benefits because the community is no longer an eyesore, right? And so I invite you to attend. Just drop it in the chat. Oops, did I drop it into everyone? No, I did not. Let me put it in to everyone. We have a symposium happening this evening, 6 to 8 p.m. Feel free to register at that Eventbrite link. It'll give you a YouTube link to sign up, and you can watch this conversation happen with folks who are doing this, saying, how do we make equity possible? The title is Preservation versus Wealth Building. Is Equity Possible? That'll help deepen this conversation, so I invite you to be part of that. Okay, extra minutes for questions. Please raise your hand. All right.
Yep, Laurie, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So Zion, really fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and all the great work that you're doing with Freedmen's Town Conservancy. Can you talk a little bit about how we met was through Common Impact. And I would love to hear about how you are integrating corporate partnerships within the community work that you're doing a little bit more. We have some corporate partners, here participating that are in the Texas area. So would love to just hear how those partnerships are working and how you're making them work.
Oh, well, thank you for that layup. Well, so I'm a state of just full gratefulness, because what happened, Common Impact brought a blessing to the Freedmen's Town community that we did not even understand was going to happen. And in fact, that blessing came through Macquarie Group, Macquarie Foundation specifically, which is a financial services company, right? Australian. They're in Houston. They didn't know that they are in the Heritage District. They're in one of the spaces that was, Black folks were removed via eminent domain, and then they built One Allen Center, which is like the financial engine of Houston. It's right across from that historic church that I shared with you, which is right across the street from Enron, now Chevron. They found out where they were, and they said, oh gosh, well, how can we help? What can we do? They got to work, and they said, well, what are you trying to work on locally? How can we be of assistance? That conversation got started with them as a corporation. They allowed us to enter into a racial equity grant, which actually paid the operating expenses for us to be able to hire and engage our first additional staff member whose work is to go out and help all the programs, the benefit, the community impact to start to come to life. So they literally facilitated us being able to double our capacity to do good, which is great, right? Because we had no other way to do that. Then Macquarie Foundation said, hey, there's Common Impact. they can have some specialists from all of their greatest minds will come together to help you answer a question. You couldn't probably pay enough people to get around a table and solve this problem for you. We have a visitor center that we're planning to open here to welcome all this heritage tourism, to be an axis and a meeting point and a hub for all this additional community impact and this new energy. And we're trying to figure out what to do with it. Well, there are so many experts within that foundation and corporation. It's like, if you just give me one good real estate person, give me a good business analyst. How about your senior marketing person? Okay, how about someone who's going to run kind of what the investment strategy would look like? What about user experience in real estate? How about your architect? All of those folks just shut up into a room with a cup of coffee and started helping us. Next thing you walk out of there with a full plan, and we are going forward in partnership with the city of Houston to realize that master plan on a Houston Public Library campus. And so that was pro bono help. It came through Common Impact. Where we've gone from there is even more incredible. With those ideas put on paper, we were able to go and then pitch that to 4 or 5 corporations that are in the district saying, look at what Macquarie did. What can you help us with? Can you put something on it, like 10K, please? You know, like we just want to get things done. We just want to celebrate Juneteenth. It's kind of the home of Juneteenth. You're here, we're here, let's do it. You know, they're like, great, we'd love to do, you know, this is easy, checkbox for our corporate social responsibility. The whole world wants to know this story, and it's an easy sell. And so all of a sudden, it just started having compounding effect. When you open the door with one trusted partner, one trusted corporation, one foundation, all of a sudden people understand that the risk is not what they may have perceived because they don't know you. And so what we invite is additional corporate partners to help us build this next evolution, which is this community trust, which we hope to have this foundation help to support us with some seed funding. And then the City of Houston's Economic Development Department is interested in matching that so we can do the work that they can't do because they can't be in the community in this deep way. And so corporate dollars are literally helping to accelerate development, but not gentrification. And it's such an oxymoron to see that that's possible. And so that's what we're doing now, and that's what we are inviting anyone, corporate partners, foundations, other nonprofits to join in and be supporting partners, because it's going to take an incredible portfolio of folks to get this impact realized in a community that really needs it and stands to benefit the city and honestly the state with hundreds of millions of dollars of heritage tourism and heads and beds and food and beverage and, you know, folks coming and going. And so we're excited to be a catalyst for change, and we invite everyone else to be a catalyst in that as well from an equitable lens. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Zion. We have time for one more question if anyone has a last minute question.
Let's see if there's anything in the chat.
I also believe Stephen dropped something in the chat, Zion, as well.
Oh, yes. Okay, Stephen asked, what is the process for becoming a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and how can we leverage more historical but under-recognized landmarks to facilitate community revitalization and empowerment? So the process for becoming a UNESCO World Heritage Site involves the National Park Service, which I think Ben mentioned, previous question. And so with the National Park Service, what they need you to do is show and prove that you have protected and you have created a boundary around the space you want to protect, which is what the Heritage District is, by the way, which is why we did it. To say, this area here is special. It has heritage. It should be a World Heritage Site in the future, right? So step 1, done as of 2 years ago. Step 2 is get the story, get the research, the documentation on paper, because the National Park Service, they're literal. You have to show them the history and the chronology of why this place matters. And that takes money, because you have to pay researchers and historians and partner with universities. We're working with Rice University very deeply on some of these efforts right now, because here's a surprise for everyone. Don't go tell anyone, or you can post to Twitter, I don't care. But Rice University's first campus, before it was where it is now, was in this Freedmenstown Heritage District. And they had to move because Freedmenstown residents would not leave. They tried to sue, they tried to ward everyone off. They even held a Ku Klux Klan Barnum and Bailey circus every year and surrounded all the houses with fire and horses to get all these Black folks to leave. All of that, right, by the way, was on the same grounds that I'm telling you, Enron and Chevron, on that same property. So everyone's history is coming to light. And so we're saying all that history has to be quantified for the National Park Service to understand how many world-changing events happened in this one place. right? And so we're presenting that information along with partners like Rice University to tell this history in a collaborative, uplifting, and affirmative way that says we all benefit from having our stories uncovered if we do it together. And it's not, accusatory. So that's what we have to do to get to UNESCO. And then there's a 10-year process to get on a tentative list. And you have to protect all the historic assets, which is what we're seeking the investment for, to protect the historic assets that are left, about 50. So how you can help with those under-recognized landmarks and facilitate community revitalization and empowerment, find a local nonprofit who's advocating for that area and support them, because they're doing what we're doing. And whether you call it a conservancy, a trust, a foundation, whether it's a neighborhood association, folks of all sorts are trying to figure out how to protect themselves, and they need sophisticated instruments and sophisticated people to help them have leverage and to be seen and to be heard. And you cannot be seen or heard without money, and we all know it. So that's what you literally are doing when you're helping, even if it's helping create a marketing plan for these places, that helps, All right.
Thank you so much, Zion. What an enlightening, engaging, passionate presentation. I think you've gained a lot of new supporters and fans of your organization and of your work and of you, Zion. Thank you again.